Here's a biography. And I wrote this song, it must have been 10 or 15 years ago. And then I rewrote it just a couple of months ago. I was in Vermont doing training for school. And, you know, if you've ever driven from northern Vermont to here, it's like east, south, east, north, east. Go over a couple of mountains, you know, go backwards. It's a long way. And so I had a long way to go, and I put on Vermont Public Radio, and they said, there's been a review of the response to the recent flood. And the review committee determined that the response was adequate. And I thought, what a great word. Not fabulous, not terrific, just adequate. It was enough, you know? It seemed like a word we need to use more in life instead of just all the superlatives. And so I got to thinking about the self-esteem movement, this idea that you have to be special and fabulous and wonderful all the time, which I can't live up to. I don't think anybody can. But adequate is good. So out of that came this song. Let me tell you the story about the younger brother of Catherine the Great. Albert the Adequate woke every morning between 7:30 and 8. He had a job doing something, and he wasn't always sure quite what. Never left the house without feeding his cats or pulling the door tight shut. He had a few quiet little hobbies, not much of a leader, I guess. But if anyone asked for help, Albert always answered yes. If he said he'd do something, you could count on him to show up with his crooked little grin. Each night Albert wrote in his diary before he got into his bed. Wrote down all the thoughts that were swirling in his head. What he'd done that day and what he'd heard and seen. Then he'd drift off into his very private dreams. When Albert died, the news reports left his neighbors quite amazed. He'd been helping folks in need in secret all his days. He'd been paying for prescriptions and for grocery bills. All he told the store was never tell. I'm talking about the younger brother of Catherine the Great. Albert the Adequate never needed to eat off a silver plate. His headstone had this epitaph with flowers carved around it. He tried to leave this world a little better than he found it. He tried to leave this world a little better than he found it. It's funny, of all the songs that I've sung to kids over the years, teenagers over the kids, that's the one that kids come up to me and thank me for, the earlier version of it. Just the idea that they could just sort of do the ordinary things, that they don't have to live up to their potential. They don't have to be famous. They don't have to be, you know, whatever it is. Just to be adequate, to do our bit. And I got that also from visiting the Media Lab in Cambridge. Our son went to MIT, and he worked for a while at this place where they talked about inventing the future. And some of it was pretty silly, you know. The idea was that every milk carton would have a little RFID chip in it, and your refrigerator would have a little thing that communicated with it. And when you were at the store, you could call up your refrigerator and say, is the milk going bad? And it would say yes. But the part that I liked best was the pledge you had to sign before you went went to work at the Media Lab. I promise to always leave the lab in better condition than I found it. And I thought, this is all we need in life, right?